everyone is welcome to present yourself in the chat so we know who is in the room. We will have this session with Carole Martinez, who is the Senior BIOPAMA Action Component Grant Manager. And she will give an introduction about BIOPAMA and the grant component, following by Jean-Paul, who is our Action Component Officer in the region. We also have colleagues from Western Central Africa for the English speaker countries, Tanya and Dede, in case you have questions for them, specific for the region. So more, I can pass now for Carole to give us the introduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. I'm delighted to be here for this online information session with you, our colleagues from the Eastern and Southern Africa, but as well our colleagues, as you mentioned, from Western and Central Africa. I will make a short introduction about BIOPAMA and the action component. Then I will hand over to Jean-Paul, who will present you in more details this specific call on the rapid response grant. So the BIOPAMA program is an initiative of the Organization of the African, Caribbean and Pacific States. It is financed by the European Union and more specifically by the 11th European Development Fund. It represents, as you can see, a very important investment of 60 million in order to improve the long-term conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity and natural resources. This program is jointly implemented and coordinated by IUCN, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, and more specifically, it's a global protected area program, and by the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. This program is implemented in close collaboration with our regional teams and with the ACP stakeholders at the regional, national, and local level. It's a 6-year program, and it's building actually on the first program phase. This program is quite important and impactful, as you can see, as we are working with and for 79 developing countries. This represents more than 3 billion people whose livelihood depends on natural resources. It represents more than half of the world biodiversity hotspots. And actually, in terms of big numbers, it represents more than 9,000 protected areas, both terrestrial and marine. So as you can see, the scope of this program is very important and represents an instrumental opportunity for progresses in terms of conservation. From knowledge to action, this program is organized with 3 main pillars: the regional observatories, or named Resource Hub as well, the reference information system, and the action component. The goal of BIOPAMA is to improve biodiversity conservation in priority areas, and this through funding and tangible activities on the ground that address both management and governance issue of protected and conserved areas. The specific objective of BIOPAMA and its action component are threefold. First, to enhance the management and the governance of the protected and conserved area in priority areas. So we are working definitely for protected area, but as well we are working within the conservation landscape identified in the ACP countries. The second objective is to strengthen the legal framework that is required in order to achieve effective biodiversity conservation. And the third, and not the last, very important objective is to support local communities' initiatives aiming to enhance the livelihoods of local people while contributing at the same time to the protected area management. The action component budget is 21 million euros, and its scope, as I indicate, is a priority area of 78 eligible ACP countries. In order to deploy its action, the action component is implemented in 6 regions, so 4 regions in Africa, the Eastern Africa region, the Southern Africa region, the Western Africa region, and the Central Africa region, as you can see on the map. In order to provide support to the wide diversity of stakeholders in your countries, we organize calls providing different types of grants. As you know, we have already organized 2 calls last year. The first one was dedicated to medium grants, or up to 400,000 euros for 3 years project. And the scope of these medium grants are national and regional. Then later in 2019, we organized another call dedicated to small technical grants in order to provide financial support to address a quick fix in terms of needs. These grants can be up to 100,000 euros. They are about 12 months, and the idea is definitely to support organizations in charge of protected and conserved areas. So the scope is more local and the site level. And now, taking into account the impact of the pandemic in your countries, in your activities, and definitely on conservation in your countries and regions, we have organized this rapid response grant in order to help you to not only cope with the impact of the pandemic, but as well to think about how you could deploy new recovery activities or alternative activities. And this response grant will be presented in further details by Jean-Paul, our colleagues, who is taking care of the action component in the Eastern Africa region and Southern Africa regions. So these rapid response grants are up to 50,000 euros for activities that can be deployed through 18 months, 12 months. And again, the idea is really to support activities at the local or site level of protected, conserved area, but as well it can be deployed by communities, a small and medium enterprise within the wider conservation landscape. So I will now hand over to my colleague, Jean-Paul. Thank you again very much for joining us, and please feel free to ask any question. Thank you again for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Carol. Thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Jean-Paul Ngane. I'm the BIOPAMA Action Component Officer based in Kigali, Rwanda. And today I'm going to talk about the Rapid Response Grant. So the purpose of the BIOPAMA Rapid Response Grant is to respond, as Carol said, to risks and difficulties that are induced by the current situation of COVID-19 crisis. And these risks and difficulties include, for example, reduction of budget for protected areas due to various reasons, for example, due to relocation of budget at national level or reduction of income from ecotourism which were supporting protected areas. There are also economic consequences for protected area staff and economic consequences for local communities living around these protected areas. Also, the health and security of local communities as well. Next, please. So the Rapid Response Grant has 3 objectives. Number 1 is to enhance management and governance of protected and conserved areas. Number 2 is to increase resilience to major shocks and recovery of protected and conserved areas, including sustainable and innovative funding planning. And thirdly is to maintain livelihood or enhance resilience of local communities to major shocks that are caused by COVID-19 pandemic, while effectively contributing to protected area management. So all applications, they should respond to emergency situation that require rapid action, not just long-standing issues that have been there for many years in protected areas. Of course, unless if these long-standing issues are exacerbated by the current situation of COVID-19. And by emergency situation, we mean the urgency of the action, whether they actually require urgent solution, or whether they have recently been worsened by the current situation of COVID-19. And of course, for this, we will need to see evidence. Secondly, we will look also, we check whether there will be a measurable conservation benefit if the activities start immediately. Thirdly, we look at the duration and reversibility of the impact. So we'll look at whether the threat has the potential to cause long-lasting negative impact, and proposals which do not meet these above criteria are likely to be rejected. So now, who is eligible to apply? So both public and private legal entities that are registered as separate legal entities in ACP countries, they are eligible to apply. And this, of course, at various levels, from national, sub-national agencies, national NGOs, international and regional organizations, CBOs, protected and conserved areas, and small and medium enterprises. All these different types of organizations are eligible to apply on one condition, that they must be already involved in the management and governance and also in community livelihoods activities of the targeted priority areas. And for this, of course, we will need to see evidence that these organizations are actually already involved through, for example, presenting a letter of support from the relevant authority in charge of protected areas. These organizations should not be beneficiary of any other grants that is funded by European Union, including EDF funds, for the same activities. And here we have a list of eligible countries in our region in Eastern and Southern Africa. And 2 points to note here. One is that South Africa and South Sudan are not eligible, but they can participate in transboundary activities. And also for organizations from OECD member countries. These are organizations that are registered or incorporated in one of the OECD member countries. They are not eligible to apply in these countries that are listed in red. These are Botswana, Eswatini, Kenya, Mauritius, Namibia, Seychelles, Zimbabwe. So these countries are not eligible for organizations from OECD member countries. Next. Now, for the activities to be eligible under the Rapid Response Grant, they must address emergencies that are resulting from the current situation of COVID-19 and the restrictions that are put in place to contain the pandemic. And these activities must be consistent with the objectives of the BIOPAMA Rapid Response Grants, and they should demonstrate possibility to achieve or potential to achieve tangible results and impact within only 1 year, because The timeline for this rapid response is only for 1 year. And this is going to be tracked through clear indicators in the logical framework. The activities should comply with the IUCN Environmental and Social Management System, which I will talk later. And they should enable data and information sharing from the project with the BIOPAMA regional observatories, in our case, the regional resource hub and the reference information system. And the activities should be cost efficient, of course, and should show sustainability. Next, please. And these are just some of the examples of eligible activities for the rapid response grants. So activities that are about maintaining or increasing patrolling and anti-poaching operations. These activities are eligible. Training for anti-poaching activities, purchase of vehicles, both for protected area surveillance, purchase of communication devices like radio, mobile phones, radar, boundaries and zoning demarcation tools, purchase of personal protective equipment for field staff, such as masks, gloves, hand sanitizers, etc. Purchase of mapping, navigation tools, and activities that are about developing and promoting sustainable livelihoods for local communities. Activities which will provide alternatives and will increase access to basic needs like food, water, fuel, energy, and health. These activities are eligible. Next. Yeah, so still with the examples of eligible activities, again, involvement of young professionals and other vulnerable groups, resilience and recovery action for protected and conserved areas, increasing sustainable innovative funding for protected areas, enhancing communication and promoting virtual wildlife tourism experiences, enhancing community resilience to major shocks such as pandemics and sharp decline of ecotourism, avoiding total or partial change of the protection status of the existing protected and conserved areas. So all these are types of activities that are eligible. And here we have activities which are not eligible for BIOPAMA funding, not only for the rapid response grant, but for all other types of BIOPAMA grants as well. So activities that are about purchase of land or involuntary settlement of people, they're not eligible. Activities on indigenous people's land or territory without their consent of these indigenous people will not be eligible. Activities on land which is contested by local communities or indigenous people. Activities that negatively affect physical cultural resources, removal or altering of physical cultural properties. These activities will not be eligible for funding. Next, please. Now, the potential environmental and social impact of proposed activities is very important for the BIOPAMA funding. So we will assess the quality of your proposal, and we will also assess the potential impact of the proposed activities on both people and the environment. And this is very important And that is why we've put some questions about this in the application form. So all applicants to the Rapid Response Grant are required to answer a series of basic questions in the application form, which will allow us to understand the context and the impact of the proposed activities. And only shortlisted projects will be subjected to a full ESMS screening. So we provide an ESMS questionnaire to answer more questions so that we understand further the impact of your proposed project. So the quality of information that is provided to this question, the ESMS question in the application form, are very important, and it is compulsory to actually complete these ESMS questions. Now, how to apply? The application process for the Rapid Response Grant, which is a grant which is up to 50,000 euros, follows a one-step application. This means that the whole proposal needs to be fully developed and submitted at once. And the call is open-ended, which means that applicants can apply at any time, and the call will be kept open until the 31st of December this year. So during this period, you can submit your application, and we'll process your application and make a decision within 6 weeks of the receipt of your proposal. So the application form is in a Word document, but you need to submit it online on the BIOPAMA Action Component website. So that is the website on which you need first to create your account, then you will be given a page, a platform to complete your application and submit it. So proposals submitted by email or handwritten proposals will not be accepted. And BIOPAMA we use 2 languages. We use English and French. So you can either submit your application in English or in French. And it is important here to note that incomplete proposals will be rejected. Next, please. So this is just to give you an idea of how the application platform looks like. So once you've created your account on the BIOPAMA Action Component portal, you'll be given an account with a page that will look like this. And as you can see, we have 3 tabs. We have 3 tabs. And the first tab here, you complete the general information about your applications, the project title, organization, and other details. Please be sure to read carefully the guidelines and the questions on this page so they can fill it properly. So next. So the tab in the middle here is where you will complete your logical framework. And there is a detailed guidance in the application form about how to complete a logical framework for these rapid response grants. The guidance is in the application form, and the format actually is in the application form, but you will need to use this space here online to submit your logical framework. So next. So this last tab here in the right corner is actually very important. So this is where you submit all required documents. And this is to give you an idea of how your proposal will be evaluated. And the emergency, as you can see, the emergency has 10 points. So this means that your proposal needs to clearly describe the emergency situation which you are aiming to address. Other aspects of your applications, like technical coherence and relevance of activities, technical capacity, financial coherence, sustainability of the proposed activities, and your answers to the ESMS will be given 5 points each. So only proposals that score above the threshold of 21 points will be submitted to the BIOPAMA Action Component Validating Committee for the final award decision. So in a nutshell, this is the process of submitting a rapid response grant. So the call is open-ended until December. And once the application is submitted, it will be the BIOPAMA regional teams will receive a notification that the application has been submitted, and we will start immediately reviewing the proposal. Then once it's reviewed, we will send it to the BIOPAMA Action Validating Committee for selection, and the results will be sent to the BIOPAMA Action Component Secretariat. And once the award is signed, then the project is supposed to be implemented within 12 months. So for more information, please visit the BIOPAMA Action Component website, where we have grants information, including the current call for proposals. So we have guidelines that are specific to the rapid response grants. So that document, you need to really read it to understand all these eligibility criteria and our process. We also have the ESMS manual for you to understand the environmental and social safeguards and how to address them. And we also have another document about procurement policies and procedures. So I will also encourage you to, if you have questions, to first maybe check our frequently asked questions on the website. And if you don't find answers there, you can always send us questions on this email address. So thank you. Thank you once again for joining us. So I will now hand over to my colleague Anna to talk about the budget.
Thank you, Jean-Paul. Can you please show the slides from the presentation? So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. We'll go quickly over the budget requirements and financial terms of this call for proposals for rapid response grants. The first requirement to the budget is that it must be cost-effective and clear. Cost-effective means that the resources financially that you ask BIOPAMA to grant you must be very clearly dedicated to produce tangible outputs. The outputs and the activities are the ones that are stated in your log frame. When we receive the proposals, the applications, we look at the budget as aligned with the log frame, and it has to be very clear to us how each of the activities you are describing in the log frame are reflected in the budget lines. We'll go through the budget template somewhat later, but I would like to say now that the budget is very simple, and there is a column. It's only one spreadsheet to complete. In this spreadsheet, there is a column called justification and calculation. Please be generous with the information. Next point, very important. We do not require any co-financing. The budget must be very clear in the sense that BIOPAMA will be funding certain activities and not the activities funded by someone else. Therefore, the budget needs to be very compact and very well defined. There are two methodologies that can be applied to the budget. It can be based on reimbursement of real cost, which means that you will be reporting on each euro and you're expected to be able to justify each euro, or you will have an option of simplified costs. The choice of the option will be determined after the proposal is selected, depending on the nature of the activities. We'll see about it a bit later. The percentage of indirect costs, meaning the costs not directly linked to the project, is maximum 7%. One very important consideration, financial support to third parties, or in other terms, sub-granting, is not allowed. Can we go further, Jean-Paul? Next slide. In the budget, you will see 5 sections. The first one is human resources. Human resources is the cost of your own staff, either the staff of your organization and or the staff of your partner organizations, co-applicants in this call. The external services cannot be part of human resources. Travel, it's self-explanatory, and it includes accommodation, meals, per diems on missions. It can also include rations for patrol. We will see an example. Purchase of equipment, vehicles, supplies, materials directly linked to the project. Here we are targeting exclusively project-related purchases, not regular office costs. There is a section for local office costs. You may want to be a bit careful with it because the direct office costs cannot duplicate the overhead of 7%. For example, if you budgeted quite a lot of direct office costs, it is not advisable to charge 7% over it. Other costs and services is everything that you buy externally. All the purchases, all the services, except of course for the purchase of equipment. For the equipment, you have a special section in the budget. Next slide, please. Okay, this is in very small font. Ineligible costs. What kind of costs are not accepted? You have the same list in the guidelines. Please read them carefully and do not include these costs. Debts. Service charges related to debts, not eligible. Provisions. Any losses that you might want to cover, this is not part of BIOPAMA funding. If the costs are already funded by another work program, another donor, another action, it is quite reasonable that BIOPAMA funding will not cover them. Land or building purchases, this is aligned with what Jean-Paul has already described. This is not eligible. In-kind contributions. What is in-kind contributions? The in-kind contributions are not costs. It means that any cost that you make is reflected in your financial statement. You buy something, you receive an invoice, you pay. In-kind contributions means that you don't have to pay. Someone gives you something free of charge. For example, a municipality allows you to use free of charge a venue for a meeting. You cannot include it in the budget because this is not a cost. Exchange losses are not eligible. Credit to third parties not eligible. Government salaries can be eligible if government officials are carrying out new activities. The regular operations are not subsidized by BIOPAMA. And an overarching principle of EU funding, costs leading to personal or private profit. As I mentioned before, any cost will be reported and accounted for and must correspond exactly to what was spent. There can be no margin, no profit margin allowed on a cost. Next slide, please, Jean-Paul. Okay. A bit of overview for your information about a comparison of reimbursement of real costs as opposed to simplified costs. When you're using a standard, regular, real cost reimbursement option, your budget has only estimated, realistically estimated figures. And the reimbursement of the costs by BIOPAMA will be based on your actual spending, euro to euro of what you have spent. It's quite obvious that this type of reporting is rather onerous and requires a lot of time. There exists an option called Simplified Cost option, which is more results oriented. In this kind of option, the unit rates are agreed upfront. For example, we can agree upfront with you a unit rate or let's say a cost per month for a group of ranges. This validation of unit rates is based on the evidence provided by grantee, by you. Therefore, it requires an investment of time during the stage of budget negotiation, and it may lead to delays in disbursing the grant. Therefore, we will look at the proposals on a case-by-case basis to see whether they are amenable to an easy and smooth use of simplified cost option. What is the advantage of this option? It is more results-oriented, so the agreed costs are paid based on achieving outputs. It reduces the likelihood of reporting errors and, very importantly, lowers administrative burden. Is there another slide or this is it? Let's see, Jean-Paul. I think this is it. We can have a look very quickly at the budget template, or rather, I would prefer budget example. Is it possible, Jean-Paul, to show a budget example?
Yes, well, let me try to share the budget example as well. So can you see it, Anna?
I can see it, but it's a bit too small. I will try
It's too small,
to
yes.
zoom in. Well, but I can see it on my screen. I mean, in my files.
Let me try to zoom.
It's
One
fine.
suggestion is every participant can do a zoom. In the toolbar in the right side, they can go to plus, and then they zoom themselves the image.
Okay.
This is a very good idea.
Yeah. But is it better now? I've tried to increase the fonts.
Jean-Paul, can you be back in the previous way? And then we can zoom in our page. It will be easier to have the whole view, I think.
Okay.
Now we just start to see the column B. Maybe we need to see from the first column.
Yes, it will be better to see the description.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so everyone can just click in zoom in, is the plus sign on, and then this grow in your own page. Please, participants, if you can confirm that you are able to see clicking on plus. You can put 100%. Okay, people can see.
It's working for me.
Thank you. So go ahead, please.
All right. The budget template can be downloaded from BIOPAMA portal. When you download it, you will see that the Excel file has a template and a budget example. The example will help you fill in the budget. All the formula are already filled in. So please be careful and do not hard code any entries, because this increases a probability of making a mistake. Let's look at the budget example. As I said, there are 5 cost categories in the budget. The first one is human resources, and there is a very good example, if you can see, in line 1.2 in human resources are cost of community ranges. And you need to fill out, of course, after you complete the description, you need to fill out the type of unit. Are you costing per ranger? Are you costing per patrol? For example, here in this particular instance, we are costing by patrol per ranger. You can see in section F, in column F, the explanation of the calculation. We took into account 10 ranges, 3 patrols per month for a project over 12 months. 10 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 12. And this is our unit. The unit value, according to your experience with similar patrols, is, in this particular instance, 25 euros. So the formula already inserted in the budget will give you the amount of 9,000. In column F, you need to complete justification of the cost or costs, where you describe the nature of cost, what kind of costs you want to budget, and your methodology, your approach to calculation. It is very important to be clear and provide as much relevant information as necessary to enable us to review the budget properly. Next section is self-explanatory, travel and subsistence. Let's see a couple of lines. For example, line 22, your ranges or the teams need transportation. So you reckon there will be 3 teams or 3 patrols over 12 months, 36. And here we have an explanation, hire of trucks for transportation of community ranges, 3 missions over 12 months. So your unit is 36, the cost of this unit is 10, and the multiplication gives you 360. Rations for ranger teams. This is budgeted in the same way as we budget the remuneration of community ranges. See, in line 1.2, we had 360, and here we have 360, because the reasoning is the same. Range rate, 10 ranges, 3 patrols, 12 months. And if the budget is structured in that manner, it will be very practical for you to build it and to cost your activities and for us to analyze. Okay? Vehicle and equipment. Kits for rangers. Please describe what kind of kits you need and why they're needed. Idem for GPS devices. You can see here we provided, as an example, a more elaborate explanation. 2 new GPS devices will be needed for accurate mapping and during monitoring and patrols in the Conservancy. And we added a model, new model XYZ, 500 euros each. In this way, it is clear and transparent for anyone who looks at it. The same explanation, the same type of explanation should be provided for rent, utilities, if you want to include these costs in the budget. Okay, and then we go to other cost services. Those are external costs and services. And as an example, I can show you 5.2, a stipend for a young professional. 12 stipends, because there are 12 months, 200 euros. Then there is an explanation, monthly stipend for a postgraduate over 12 months. I want also to draw your attention to the budgeting for all kinds of meetings, events, trainings. Please be generous with information. If you budget for meetings and you have 4 meetings, please provide a very brief and substantive breakdown. What is included in this 500? Do you have a venue? How many participants? How much are you going to spend on different cost items? And this you can do in justification column. Okay, this is it. Here we have indirect cost at maximum 7%, because office costs are quite modest, so full 7% are applied. One more thing, in terms of purchase of equipment, for contracts over 20,000 euros, there is an obligation to comply with BIOPAMA procurement policy. The procurement policy will be part of the documents displayed in the portal. When you fill in the budget, please look at the footnotes. Every time there is a footnote, for example, project proposal, there is footnote 2. Please do not ignore it and look what it means. In this particular instance, it means that you need to insert your project proposal number, which is generated by BIOPAMA portal. Otherwise, you won't know what is the proposal to which this budget is linked. This is it. This is it from my side.
Thank you very much. I think we can try to first answer the questions that we receive on the chat. And then if someone wants to write a new question or speak your question, we will still have a few minutes for that. So we have questions about eligibility, about the proposal, the time, and financial. So since financial was the last one, maybe we can start with these ones. And so the first question is, what qualifies as indirect costs? And the second question is, in the case of small enterprises, if I'm right, if the grant is given, what is the fiscal status of the funds? Meaning, as a private limited, here in Tanzania, the funds will very likely be considered as income and taxed accordingly. So if you can try to answer these two questions, and then we can move for the other questions for Carol and Jean-Paul.
Can we go one by one, please? It was quite a long list, and I will address each question.
Okay.
Yeah,
sure. What qualifies as indirect costs?
Indirect costs are costs not directly linked to the project. It means that you might have some transversal costs, cost of printing, cost of copying, cost of electricity, cost of utilities. If you don't have analytical accounting, you cannot link them to the project. Therefore, we have a provision which allows you to charge 7% and to cover all those indirect costs.
Thank you. I hope it's clear, David.
Is it clear?
We may go for the second one. He confirmed yes, it's clear. In the case of small enterprises, if the grant is given, what is the fiscal status of the funds? She's saying that because in Tanzania, as a private limited company, the funds are likely to be considered income and therefore taxed.
Okay. In Europe, grants are out of scope of taxes. Basically, a grant represents a reimbursement of your real costs. Therefore, even if it's treated as an income, there will be no implications in practical terms. You receive 50,000, you spend 50,000. So your income will be equal your expenditures. However, there is a question of local or national law, which needs to be looked at more closely. Okay, this is all I can say about this.
Thank you. And maybe Carol and Jean-Paul can answer the other questions regarding what's about the time between the time frame. What's the turnaround between time for proposals from submission online and to grant decision, negative or positive answer?
Thank you, Maria. The turnaround is, as Jean-Paul indicated, is 6 weeks. So once you have submitted your application, and please allow me to stress here the fact that please double check that your application and your proposal is complete. If not, it will prevent the evaluation. So once it's submitted and complete, we have 6 weeks for coming back to you and telling you if your application has been selected for a fund or not.
Thank you, Carol. And concerning the proposals, in the online log frame, what does actual value means? How we should define and choose the value?
Sure. So why we ask you actually to specify and to deploy your log frame on the portal is for the following reason. Actually, the data you will enter and the value you will enter, namely figures against your indicators, will be assessed by us in order to monitor the progress in terms of implementation of your activities, but we'll work as well with a regional observatory and the reference information system in order to use your progresses, your data, in order to identify what have been actually the progresses in terms of management and governance of the protected and conserved areas in your country, in your region. So this is why we ask you to develop your log frame online, and we will ask you to put figures against your indicator. So the value will be the figures. If you, for instance, you are planning to deploy more patrolling activities, what will be your target? And you will have regularly to specify how many patrolling missions you have been able to conduct. This is just an example.
Thank you, Carol. The questions now about eligibility. So one is, can a small micro enterprise and a separately the direction of a protected area apply for an emergency grantee? I mean, I hope it's rapid response grant if they present complementary activities covering both enhanced conservation of PA and improved livelihoods.
Yes, as Jean-Paul indicated, actually, who is eligible? It is organizations that are already involved. It doesn't mean that they are in charge of the protected area, but they are already working with the protected and conserved area, already working with the communities. So any organization, and including SMEs, already working with protected and conserved area, working with communities in question of livelihoods, are eligible. But again, please pay very much attention to the different criteria and the one related to emergency. The fact to already work with a protected and conserved area or to work already with the community is not enough. The activities that you will have to submit have to address the consequences, the issues, the impact induced by the COVID-19. They have to address an emergency situation. So please attention to the different criteria, and I invite you again very warmly to read the guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. I think there is a question related to it. If a support letter from a community organization would be acceptable, or must be authority like government or government agency?
Well, again, it's very much, I would say, context related. It depends about the activities you want to deploy. If you want to support community livelihood, definitely support letter from this community, from their representative, is very much welcome. If you want to work with within a protected and conserved area, a support letter from the organization, the authority in charge of this protected or conserved area is as well very much welcome. So again, think about what will be the scope of your activities, where you will deploy these activities in order to figure out who has to be informed about your intent to deploy a rapid response grant, and you want to work with communities or within a protected and conserved areas.
Okay, thank you. I think David tried to clarify the question is if a small enterprise can apply in parallel with application made by the protected area management agency, probably. So two applications for the same area.
So for the same protected areas, and if you want to work in complementarity, my kind advice would be please try to apply jointly. You can be a co-applicant of the protected area, but in any case, if you want nevertheless to have your own project and you want to work within and for this protected area, you will have to get a support from this protected area. But you can do it, but it's always better to work in partnership.
Thank you. And another question regards eligibility. If they want to work in Kavango Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area, they can only work in Zambia and Angola, but not in Zimbabwe, Botswana, or Namibia? Or do
I think this question is about the special status of OECD organization. So as such, just would like to ask actually, what is the status of your organization? Are you based, are you registered in an ACP country, or are you an OECD organization? Because if you are an OECD organization, yes, indeed, there are, I would say, some conditions. So your activities will have to be implemented in only few countries as specified by Jean-Paul. So think about what is actually the status of your organization. And feel free to reach out, feel free to come back to us. We are happy to provide any clarification. We are happy to have a call with you in order to figure out more in depth what is your situation, how your organization can be qualified, so that we can avoid some issues in terms of eligibility. Jean-Paul and myself, we are very happy to reply by email or having a phone call.
Thank you, Carol. And for the colleagues, I think Hansra has already said in the chat details about the direct, indirect costs and also about the taxes. And you can also read the guidelines and reach us with the email again. So I will come back to the last question, which is on financing again. So in Europe, a grant is not taxed, but in Eastern Africa, if you wire 50,000 to a bank account, this will be taxes between 10 and 21%. How you do justify this in a budget? Do you budget each line, including VAT costs? I think this is the question from Hansra. In order to claim VAT, the beneficiary must provide a declaration from the National Tax Authority certifying that the beneficiary's cash is not able to recover VAT fully or partially. This declaration should be kept in the project file. In case the national tax authorities do not deliver such a certificate, the audit report can certify that VAT is not recovered. So you have all the information here. I think we have a new question. What about organizations that want to work in an area where they have no other activities? Probably, Janet, you mean that you are going to start in a new area? Yes, I think it's about that. Is it possible to apply for a grant in an area that you don't work yet?
Well, again, when you will apply, you have to show evidence about your experience in collaboration with protected areas, with conservation areas, in management, in governance, or community livelihoods. So again, depending what and where will be this area, we have to see what is the most efficient. Why we actually specified organization already involved? Because here we are dealing with rapid response grant, having already an existing collaboration, an existing partnership, relationship with communities you want to work with a protected area you want to work with. It's an asset. You don't have to start from scratch. You have already a trust relationship with this organization. And this actually is a real asset and an advantage for getting support that is needed. So this is why we specified already involved, because we want to make sure that you won't have to waste time building the relationship in order to deploy activities. Here we want to really address an emergency situation. So this explains why we specify this condition. Organization already involved in protected and conserved area management and governance, working with this protected and conserved area, and working with the communities you want to support. So again, we have to see case by case. what is this this area, what are the activities to be implemented in order to see if you are matching the eligibility criteria or not. Again, something I want to stress, please read again the guidelines. You will see what we call priority areas is wider than protected and conserved areas. You can deploy activities in what is called key landscape for conservation that has been defined by the European Commission. And actually, I put the link in the chat for you to see what has been defined as a key landscape for conservation in Africa. So please have a closer look.
Thank you. I think, Anna, you want to add something?
No, I just wanted to say that I didn't understand that we are talking about VAT. I understood that we are talking about corporate tax, which is charged on the movement of the reserve. But indeed, if it's VAT, then a sort of certificate on non-recovery can be considered. But we will check it with our auditors.
Okay, thank you. Okay, just to know, if you have any other question, you can open your mic or we can close.
Hi.
Please say your name and put your question, please.
This is Reynard from Nairobi National Park, and I sent some questions on the chat. We're having different programs running around the park with the community and within the park itself. So just checking on the eligibility. I sent the detailed questions on the chat to the organizers. So they're just asking about the eligibility, but some of that have been answered by.
I'm happy to answer. No problem.
Okay.
Yes, a national park is eligible. Yes.
Thank you.
And yes, we are going to share the presentation and the video recording in the BIOPAMA website soon.
And for queries, please use the mailing lists that are presented in the guidelines. It's mailing list because ourselves and our colleagues are all in the loop. So we are sure that whether it's me or Jean-Paul or Anna or Anshra, somebody will reply to you. So please use this mailing list.
Can I ask another question about the funds?
Please go ahead.
Okay, I'm David van Heldorf. I'm in the Mafia Island Marine Park in Tanzania. As far as the structure of the grant is made, that means, if I understood correctly, that we do the expenses first, like we pay the salaries, we pay the anything that is requested, and then we provide an invoice on which you're going to do a reimbursement, or is the funds provided beforehand?
The funds are provided in such a manner that you are allowed to function and carry on your operations. We will make sure that enough cash is transferred to you, and the amount we are talking about will be dependent on your budget forecast. Therefore, the answer is that we do make advances up to 90% of the total grant amount. The final 10% are paid after the approval of the final report. So in this sense, it's a rather comfortable situation cash flow wise.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I think we have answered all the questions, Carol.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Please read carefully the guidelines, send us your queries using the mailing list, and we do look forward to a great application.